South Africa is famous for being able to talk its way through the toughest situations and come out on the other side. But lately, we can't even agree on how to start a national conversation about the future we want. From key Afrikaner lobby groups to political parties, including two within the GNU, many have pulled out of the National Convention, which started on Friday. And the organizers insist it's just a launch to kickstart the actual dialogue. So why the rush then when so much is still unresolved? I also want to delve into the worrying trend of our army generals speaking publicly about South Africa's politics and policy. This week, the chief of the SANDF did it in Iran, and he went while South Africa was in sensitive talks with the United States over trade tariffs imposed on us. And apparently, nobody knew about this trick. Not the president, not the deputy defense minister, not Durko, no one. But at least now we're told on Thursday that Defense Minister Angie Motshekga met with Maphwanya. I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo, and this is your week in politics.
Today marks the first sitting of the National Convention of the National Dialogue, a space where we confront our realities openly, respectfully and constructively. This is not a partisan platform. This is a national platform. Here, no voice is too small. No perspective is too inconvenient to be heard. We are gathered to listen to each other.
There's no controversy around the National Convention. At least that's what the highest office of the land says. This comes despite accusations that it's hijacking a process meant to be citizen-led.
Proceedings were delayed when a member of the Khoi community demanded to be included in the first panel at the gathering. Organizers had to negotiate with the aggrieved person to leave the stage. Watch.
A newly established organizing committee was put together to continue with preparations for the first convention. It comes after the Thabo Mbeki, Oliver Tambo, F.W. de Klerk, Steve Biko and Luthuli foundations pulled out, citing a rushed process and limited logistics, raising concerns about the event's ability to make a meaningful impact. Following the exit of some legacy foundations from the preparatory task team, a convention organizing committee has been established to see through this Friday's first national conversation. When asked about the impact that the exit of these organizations will have on the credibility of the process, those now steering the ship say they've been able to steam ahead more than they have before.
I don't think we are alarmed by any stretch of imagination by the departure of the foundations as it was asked. This process is not about the foundations. It's not about any one of us sitting here today. It's about ordinary South Africans. I don't think there is a slightest impact. And I must say, over the last 4 days, so much was done compared to the past several months. That I can say as a matter of fact.
But this week, a series of cynical comments and actions have been laid at the feet of those organizing what was meant to kickstart a national conversation. At least two partners in the Government of National Unity, the DA and Freedom Front Plus, have pulled out. Both raised concerns over the credibility of the process. Questions over funding, leadership, and claims that the ANC is hijacking the exercise have all been cited as reasons for their decisions.
Many of the concerns raised by the foundations are the very concerns we raised weeks ago when we withdrew from the process. And so I think that if we're going to have it, and I don't think we need another big talk shop, we know what our problems are, but if it has any chance of credibility, it requires those legacy organizations who've been at the heart of the conceptualization of the process and who now are also concerned it's a one-way street.
We can actually make a contribution in getting them back to the dialogue and participating. I'm talking about Democratic Alliance. And the same would be for other parties in the Government of National Unity. The MK party was announced yesterday that they are definitely not going to participate. That's no surprise. They have never been supportive of a constitutional process in South Africa in terms of their official positions. They basically argue against the existence of the Constitution, despite the fact that they make use of it from time to time when going to court. But that is not a surprise.
Action SA says it won't be sending a formal national leadership delegation, but instead, the party will deploy 2 senior members of parliament as observers.
We're really disappointed about the withdrawal of some of the legacy foundation organizations. We're also very concerned about some of the allegations around the funding, the budget, where it's coming from, how it will be administered, who will account for it. Will it comply with all the financial legislation and the PFMA requirements?
The chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations has written to both the Presidency and National Treasury to get an understanding of where the money will be coming from, as the dialogue was not a line item in the 2025-26 budget.
What government does is that it tables a Division of Revenue bill and an appropriations bill. Both those bills have been debated in Parliament, and I chair the committee. I do not remember seeing an item called the National Dialogue, which means in essence that sure, National Treasury can make a decision to say this is a special event that is taking place. We are going to do what is called viaments. What we are asking as a committee is that let's not do it post facto, let us do it up front.
Yeah.
So that firstly, we know which vote it comes from. If it's from vote 1, which is the presidency vote is just over R1 billion. So if you spend R500 million, that is significant. Any member of parliament who voted in good conscience to say, I know the programs of the presidency, then is now being told money is going to be diverted for the national dialogue. That must be a rationale for it. And if that money exceeds 8% of that vote, then only Parliament can approve that.
The Thabo Mbeki Foundation confirmed that its patron would not attend Friday's national convention, in line with the decision by the other legacy groups to withdraw from the process. Now, in a scathing letter to the organizers, Chairperson Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi says they were only invited on Monday to attend, despite having written to them 2 days earlier. Now, this contradicts President Cyril Ramaphosa's comments to the media last Friday that the event had to proceed despite the withdrawals because the invite had already been sent out. The letter also says it's not clear what the UNISA meeting is intended to achieve. Mbeki's foundation also believes the only legitimate body mandated to call a national convention is the Preparatory Task Team, which has been operating for the past 13 months. The letter also slammed Friday's event that's been described as the kickoff of an inclusive citizen-led process, calling it an unethical attempt to mislead the country.
Look, for President Ramaphosa, the relationship with former President Mbeki is one that is cordial, or rather call it comradely, cordial as well as professional, with observations around what the former president is attempting to do. The president will not venture into that.
One political analyst says the conversation needs to move beyond discussing personalities and alleged animosities between Mbeki and Ramaphosa.
The question of who's driving it, it seems pretty clear now that it is being driven by the ANC president of South Africa. That is one issue. The other issue is the preparation really for this. You need lots of documents. If you are going to have hundreds of people meeting at a conference, whatever the status of the conference, you have to have a lot of documents that have to be distributed beforehand, whereby the delegates can read the documents, understand what what they're about so that they can debate the documents when they meet. I have not seen any documents being distributed for this national convention. So this seems to be an informal gathering at a huge expense to the taxpayer.
A little over a year since President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the government of national unity, the DA is saying co-governing with the ANC has been frustrating. Now, we know the two parties have clashed publicly several times, with the second largest partner accusing Luthuli House of imposing its policies despite lacking a majority. In a briefing on Monday, flanked by his colleagues in the executive, DA leader John Steenhuisen pledged to undo all legislation they believe has stalled the economy. Newzroom Africa's Junior Kumalo was there for us.
As part of its campaign policy offering in the lead-up to the local government elections, the DA has laid out a 6-point plan to reform and turbocharge South Africa's economy.
These 3 roadblocks are BBBEE, employment equity, and the Expropriation Act. BBBEE and the racial quotas that go along with it have failed. Over the last decade, black unemployment has grown, and black household income has fallen dramatically. These policies have failed.
According to Steenhuisen, the BBBEE policy, which came into effect in April 2004, has been mismanaged by the ANC, leading to the enrichment of only a handful of politically connected individuals. As such, the DA is calling for sweeping regulatory reforms to establish what it describes as a business-friendly environment which enables entrepreneurship, investment, and job creation. The party that is in core governance at a national level says its hands have been tied within the GNU owing to the ANC's refusal to accept that it no longer has a majority.
It has been quite frustrating to be in this arrangement in this year, because it cannot be right that one party to a coalition, without its own majority, comes down from the mount with tablets written in stone and says, these are going to be the policies of this government.
A new report from the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection reveals that the government has not improved under the GNU. It also states the provinces of Mpumalanga and Free State could slip out of the control of the ANC after the 2029 general elections.
Mpumalanga and the Free State are these two provinces that currently sit on the basis of last year's election results on 51%. And a simple analysis of the election result trends of the ANC over South Africa, Democratic South Africa's elections, show that since 2004, and in 2 or 3 provinces, I think 2 provinces only in 2009, there were peaks in support, and those provinces have not returned better results for the ANC at all. And there were relatively big dips in some provinces, these 2 included, in the last election. And should that trend continue, downward trend, and carry up to now, we don't see anything that suggests that it will not be continuing, those 2 provinces could definitely also slip out of ANC control.
In a second attempt, former President Jacob Zuma and the MK party have filed an urgent application in the Gauteng High Court to still overturn President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to place Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on leave of absence and appoint Feroz Kachalia as acting minister. The move follows the Constitutional Court's refusal to grant direct access to Zuma and the MKP in July. Now, in their recent court papers, they maintain that Ramaphosa's refusal to meet their demands is prima facie evidence of illegality and seek to have his decisions reviewed and set aside.
They have continued with their legal bid in the High Court in Pretoria. Of course, we knew that this was coming given the letter of demand that was sent by the applicants in the matter. That's former President Jacob Zuma, who's also the leader of the MK party. The applicants state a number of reasons and grounds upon which they are challenging the decisions that have been taken and made by the president. Among them is, as you correctly mentioned, that they argue that there is no provision in the Constitution that explicitly grants or empowers the president those powers to place a minister on leave of absence. In particular, they cite Section 91, subsection 2 of the Constitution, which says that the president may appoint a deputy president and ministers, and particularly may dismiss them.
Staying with matters related to the MK party, its disgruntled founder, Jabulani Khumalo, is continuing his fight to be reinstated as the leader of the organization. This week, he launched an urgent constitutional court bid against the Independent Electoral Commission. In his court papers, Khumalo maintains his claims that the MK was fraudulently hijacked. After the break, we'll look closely at SANDF Chief Rudzani Maphwanya's visit to Iran and the political statements he made while there. He's got a lot to answer for, least not to the President of our Republic. We'll also cover South Africa's new proposal to the United States in a bid to ease the 30% tariff impact. Stay with us for that conversation. Welcome back. You're still watching Your Week in Politics, giving you the roundup of this week's biggest stories. Now, Chief of the SANDF, Rudzani Maphwanya, caused a stir during a visit to Tehran, where he delivered a politically significant message when he commented on South Africa's genocide case against Israel before the ICJ. Now, according to the Tehran Times, he conveyed greetings on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Defense Minister and spoke of how South Africa and Iran share a common vision to confront global arrogance and colonial aggression. His remarks came during an especially sensitive week, with South Africa in the midst of negotiating a new trade deal with the United States in a bid to reduce the 30% tariffs imposed by Washington. But here's the twist. We're told that neither the president nor Durko knew about Maphwanya's trip. Really?
In the general's visit, did the president know that the general was visiting Iran? Neither did he sanction that visit. The general's sort of administrative process for travel approval starts and ends with the minister, as much as the president is the appointing authority and the commander-in-chief. He does not get involved in supervising the general's travel. That process sits with the minister. So the president did not know.
The Department of International Relations moved to clarify that only they, along with the presidency, are mandated to make any official foreign policy or diplomatic statements.
We've been engaging with the Department of Defense since yesterday, when the media reports came out, and you would have seen that we put out a statement saying that the responsibility to communicate South Africa's diplomatic and political stance in relation to interstate relationships resides with the presidency and with Durko.
The Defense Department released a similar statement describing Maphwanya's statements as unfortunate.
The trip was approved by Minister Motshekga. In terms of the regulations, she's the one who has the powers and the mandate to approve the trips, or rather the trips of both the chief of the SANDF and the DG, who's the Secretary of Defense. The outburst is not just about him going to Iran, the timing only, or rather the utterances, but also it's about the context of the current geopolitics. So I believe that South Africans have all the rights to really question the timing, the utterances, and all that. The minister and the chief of the SANDF, they work very well. They meet probably twice a week because there are a number of issues in the environment.
Clearly, someone's being economical with the truth because surely somebody knew about this trip. So we're told now that Defense Minister Angie Motshekga did sign off on this, but by protocol, Maphwanya is meant to brief the president daily on the state of the country. So how does the most senior army general board a plane, leave the republic, travel all the way to Iran to pledge allegiance, and President Ramaphosa's none the wiser? And the optics and timing couldn't have been worse given all the geopolitical gymnastics South Africa is currently navigating.
The point by the presidency that the president, one, did not know about the trip, and secondly, that the trip itself was ill-advised, find that a little bit improbable. And you'll remember that part of the issues around Iran is that Iran is one of the expanded entrants now into the BRICS. And there's no doubt that we've got significant bilateral relationships with Iran. There are South African companies doing business there. And there is an MOU between the countries' two militaries on, a cooperation, as it were. Therefore, from time to time, they have to meet. And so I think the second part for me, which I find quite a little bizarre, is that the president can claim at any given time that he may not have known when the general of the South African National Defense Force is taking a trip out of the country, because that strikes me as a national security question.
So not only was our SANDF chief in Iran, a country that's a sworn enemy of the United States, but back home, South Africa was trying to put its best foot forward with officials in Washington to limit the damage from those 30% tariffs. On Tuesday, Pretoria submitted a revised offer as negotiations have continued since the taxes took effect last week. An estimated 30,000 jobs are now at risk in an already battered economy, with the latest second quarter unemployment figures released on Wednesday painting an even bleaker picture. Newzroom Africa's Zolega Kodashe has that story.
Government has been implementing a response anchored on 5 key elements. 1, continued engagements with the United States to secure a deal and reduce the tariffs.
A new offer is on the table for the United States after it rejected a previous one in May this year. Part of this revised proposal intends to address concerns raised by the U.S.
Protocols affecting poultry. In this regard, South Africa granted market access under the conditional self-ban and self-lifting system. This will ensure that the U.S. is able to leverage the tariff rate quota of 72,000 tons already agreed in 2026. Secondly, with regards to blueberries, we've granted market access for states that are free of fruit fly and agreed to mitigation measures with those states with fruit fly. And also with regards to pork, in this regard, it is open, subject to the biosecurity requirements. Consequently, the USA Africa Trade Desk has informed us that it will be shipping containers of poultry and pork to South Africa in 2 weeks' time, which is testimony that these issues have been resolved.
While engagements continue, government is pushing ahead to assist companies through measures including their export support desk, with 23 companies already seeking assistance.
Staying with news from Washington, the U.S. State Department has released its annual report on human practices worldwide. For South Africa, the assessment is grim, with the report claiming the situation has worsened significantly. It takes aim at the Land Expropriation Act, raises concerns over alleged extrajudicial killings, and accuses the country of repressing racial minorities. Newzroom Africa's U.S. correspondent Simon Marks has more on the tone, language and implications of the report.
That this is going to go down in the annals of American history. This is an annual State Department review that is published every year by successive presidents for decades. into the state of human rights around the world. And presidents in the past have been accused of using it to knock countries that they are particularly concerned with or hostile towards. There's often, for example, enormous debate about what the Human Rights Report has to say about what is taking place in various parts of the Middle East, or what it has to say about what's taking place in Cuba. But there has never been any kind of suggestion that South Africa would be in the spotlight until this year. And you've got to wonder what historians in generations to come are going to make about the text in this report that relates to South Africa, repeating so many of the concerns that the South African government has dismissed as false.
DIRCO Director General Ziyanda Ngcobo says the report is riddled with inaccuracies and the department will address this through the proper channels.
What you've seen with this report, for example, is distortion of the Expropriation Act, for example, the no compensation clause as being seen as a gross human rights abuse. And this is in stark contrast to how the Human Rights Council treats this. You know, for many years, South Africa was criticized for being slow on transformation. And one of those issues was equity within land ownership. And that's why the Human Rights Council saw this as a step in the right direction. So we have to engage with the US on this, and also the manner in which they portray the institutions within South Africa dealing with, for example, freedom of expression and police abuse.
That's all for This Week in Politics. In the coming days, we'll bring you extensive coverage of that national conversation taking place at UNISA, running until Saturday, and the outcomes of those discussions. But for now, it's goodbye, and thank you for watching.